Howdy fellow tubers, welcome back for another entry in the best games I played for the year. This video is stupid late. A lot of the developments in the world at large last year were distressing or not very interesting to me, so we'll skip that part of this year. Personally, I actually did pretty well, finally making Twitch affiliate, which is super gratifying after years of nothing happening on YouTube. Finally published the top 10 favorite gameplay loops video I've been working on for 6 years, and started seriously shopping for my first car, all without any more major ailments or crashes. All the while, I played so many games, to the point that a whole bunch of them I didn't even finish, even though I really wanted to, because I was just getting footage for previously mentioned top 10 video. But there were also some really great new ones I did finish in 2025, mostly. Take a look.
10.
Oh, whatever shall I do? I really like exploring intricate, tightly designed level maps, and managing resources to survive. But I really don't like bioterror or truly dark horror stories. Why are there no games made for my very specific sensibilities? Okay, yes, but also puppets. My Friendly Neighborhood is baby's first Resident Evil in the best possible way. See, while everyone else plays these games for the horror aspects, the most compelling aspect of this formula for me is the concept of turning an otherwise familiar and mundane location into a twisted wonderland, simply through small, down-to-earth problems, like locked doors, elevators glued shut, and secret passages opened via escape room tier puzzles installed because the original owners were beyond eccentric. The other thing that interests me about these games is managing resources so meticulously you are literally reorganizing objects in your backpack as tetraminos and pentaminos like it's freaking Tetris. I will admit, I was slightly underwhelmed by the item variety in this entry, but I think it's hilarious the low accuracy handgun converts post-it notes into large, colorful, children's show letters. And I think taping specific puppets down to make a safe and clear path is a very nice routing mechanic. Finally, when you consider the traditional tone of Resident Evil clones, or just how cynical most game stories are these days, it was refreshing to have a story incorporate some legitimately dark subject matter from both the puppets and the humans, yet still come to a positive conclusion.
9.
As a big fan of Minecraft, I've been interested in one of its primary inspirations ever since I first heard about it. But the ASCII graphics and the insane processing power required to make Dwarf Fortress run scared me away, until they released a Steam version. As expected, it's insane how exhaustively detailed the worlds this engine can conjure, where injury is measured in blood loss and bone breaks instead of HP. The laws of gravity are more consistent, and nothing material you provide as managerial overlord can fully make up emotionally for the loss of limb or loved ones. The losing is fun tagline really is the truth, if you let it be. I ended up getting too comfortable in my first run, miraculously never having to deal with any combat situations. So when a lich and his minions showed up to my base, my dwarves were horrifically unprepared. But because of how the AI works, after the vast majority of my dwarves were slaughtered, there was a scenario where they kind of just went back to business as usual, while occasionally running from the lich whenever it showed up in their general vicinity. Furthermore, because autosaving is somewhat different from other survival games like Minecraft or Don't Starve, I was able to boot up an earlier save in the same world, and build up my base before the Lich showed up, allowing my dwarves to repel him and his entourage. We'll say we got a vision of the future and averted disaster. Yeah, let's run with that. All things considered, Dwarf Fortress is a lot of the things I like about Minecraft, but it is also held back by the top-down viewpoint and a lack of redstone. As such, it's not taking Minecraft's crown as my favorite building sandbox, but it is definitely a special game. As I said in my top 10 gameplay loops video, lately I've been interested in driving as an exploration tool. So when I saw a driving game set in the Pacific Northwest that also had a gimmick of resource gathering to customize your magic SCP car, I knew I had to play it. I did not expect the surprisingly heartwarming story about regrets and overcoming depression, or this haunting soundtrack. The gameplay loop of driving through scenic, rural landscapes, avoiding SCPs and environmental hazards, while scrounging for the materials to upgrade your car, then turning on your spatial disruption machine and flooring it to get to the giant pillar of light before the zone shreds you to bits, is super fun and satisfying. I love the mechanical compromise they made, repairing the physical aspects of the car to cartoonishly quick and easy magic repair putty you just glob onto the broken pieces, so you don't have to fiddle with the more technical aspects of repairing a car while dodging SCPs out in the zone. And yet making the process of troubleshooting the quirks of the SCP car that build up as it's exposed to more of the zone's radiation just complicated and nuanced enough to make you feel like a smart mechanic when you solve the problem. Decorating the car is fairly novel for me. IRL, I just want a box that goes from place to place. But between the tactical benefits of making it easier to find if you get lost, and the lulls you can get from the right combination of a custom air freshener, steering wheel, and gear shifter, it's worth putting in a little effort to never go into the zone with the same car twice. I did have mixed feelings about the final level, but even now, I just can't wait to get back on the road again. 7. When 2025 started, I was ready for a new game to mess around with on my phone when I'm killing time. Over the years, I've found I don't really like poker for its social mind games, but I do find it pretty fun to assemble scoring poker hands. So when I heard everyone raving about a roguelike where you combine deck building mechanics with poker hand assembly for higher and higher scores, I realized this might be the time waster I was looking for. I was not prepared for how this game just devoured my life. I put off a distressing amount of hours of sleep, and been more distracted than I'm proud of, playing this game during ongoing conversations. I'm kind of glad I've hit my jumping off point, because if I kept chasing higher scores in this game, who knows how bad this addiction would get. It's a roguelike, where each round you play multiple hands from a traditional 52 card deck to beat a high score so you can go on to the next round. When you win a round, you receive cash that you can then use to purchase extra cards to stack your deck and make whole new types of hands possible, like a 5 of a kind, planetary cards that change the score you receive for each hand type, tarot cards that activate some specific effect, such as modifying a normal card to provide a specific bonus, vouchers that give you bonuses such as more discards per round, or a joker, which is a card that's always in effect. Dramatically changes how your hands are scored, and as a result, how you play. The true fun for me was unlocking all the jokers, vouchers, and the unique decks that all give you different starting bonuses or slightly modify the rules for the run. And without that, I don't really have anything to work towards. But I still find myself reflexively tapping that link thinking, just one more round.
6.
It's weird how so many of these high schoolers get sucked into a world made from the city's collective unconsciousness on the way to school in the morning. Seems sort of disruptive to your education, if you ask me. Between how high I ranked Persona 4 in my very first countdown, and all the hype Persona 5 brought through external sources, like Smash over the years, I went into it with fairly high expectations, which for the most part were delivered on. The number of different life sim activities that have nuanced combinations of boosting Joker's personal skills, raising social links, crafting items, or raising Baton Pass a rank gives you plenty to do besides combat and the story. Combine the mechanics with the premise of the things you can do, and while I ended up feeling like there was a minor resource economy oversight where you could end up maxing out social skills and still constantly be getting points for said social skills with no extra payoff, the overall flexibility of the system means you can participate in genuine role-playing to make each playthrough feel different, and even create interesting challenge runs. Then we get to the combat and the dungeons. Status effects, acting as a type effectiveness modifier that creates more opportunities to land a stunning attack, and stunning attacks that not only reward you with an extra turn, but stat boosts if you pass the baton, makes orchestrating a one-round party wipe more viable and more satisfying. My desire for quiet professional thieves chafes a ton at these loudmouth children playing not-so-stealthy vigilantes, but they're all lovable idiots, and I do appreciate the features the pretend stealth mechanics add to the exploration. How the palaces weave fantasy themes, heist tropes, and the personality of the target together is high-tier dungeon design. And incorporating the rules of the palaces to pull off the Phantom Thief's greatest trick is now one of my favorite moments in a JRPG. Unfortunately, the rest of the story is full of aspects I'm not as fond of. The borderline mind control that is the central narrative mechanic by itself makes this a story I'm hesitant to revisit. But if nothing else, we'll always have this banger soundtrack.
5.
I choose you, Decidui. I'm a very off and on Pokemon enjoyer. I haven't played a new mainline entry in 10 years. This year, while recording footage, I remembered how fun and addicting Pokemon can be. And, after certain disappointments, I felt compelled to sub in a game that I could complete very quickly for a better top 10. That didn't end up happening, but it was worth putting this on the list. Probably the biggest secondary gameplay loop time sink was the refresh system, which not only allows you to take care of Pokemon manually, healing their wounds and cleaning them up for pure comfort, but also lets you pet the doggy. And yes, I realize this is a feature from 10 years ago, but it genuinely didn't sink in how important the ability to pet the dog in the Monster Razor was until I had it in my hands. Another aspect I didn't really grasp until I had played it is how well conceived Pokemon Moon's story was. Like, it's still Pokemon, and between deadlines and unspoken rules of the franchise, the execution of that story doesn't reach its full potential. But the way the game uses preconceived notions about good guys and bad guys, while gradually revealing the interweaving relationships between the four primary human characters, is so good, I'd easily put it as one of the better stories in a JRPG I've played. When it comes to Mons, Decidueye, Alolan Sandslash, Vikavolt, Salazzle, and Drampa made up my team, alongside Mudsdale, which makes me more than ever want that Pegasus Pokemon to complete the set. Sorry, not sorry. Finally, we come to the most important part, the combat. Mainline Pokemon still has one of the most refined and balanced combat engines in the genre, and Pokemon Moon didn't disappoint. I will confess, I very rarely use the Z moves, and as such, I forgot the many nuances they have as a mechanic. But they worked well enough as a nuclear option when circumstances called for it. Both the totem battles and the kahunas were surprisingly brutal. Between the AI being fairly competent with good movesets, Pokemon calling for help, and the fact that the Mons tended to have pretty high levels for the area they were in, those guys hit like a truck. As such, I had loads of fun building a team over my journey and finding a way to beat those final fights. Time will tell if this particular iteration of Pokemon wins out as one of my favorites, but for now it fills the spot perfectly. Come along with me on another peaceful and whimsical journey of crafting and friendship. Atelier Ryza 2, The Lost Legends and the Secret Fairy is the account of another joyful journey with Ryslin Stout and friends, as they uncover and investigate multiple deeply hidden ruins that were occupied by multiple civilizations at different eras of time, while raising a pet and still solving every problem with homemade explosives. I love this story for how chill and low-key it is. Barely anything happens beyond adulting and exotic fantasy professional slice of life stuff. But when you get a fun bunch of characters together, that's all you really need. Even when the ecologically devastating Felucia reappear, there's very much a sense of, been there, done that, which makes the whole thing a peaceful respite from so many heavier stories I've slogged through in recent years. Bridging the gap between gameplay and story, the archaeological sequences fit really well into the hunting and gathering phase of Atelier's gameplay loop, and gamifies reading through lore entries in a way that lore-heavy franchises like Dark Souls or Kingdom Hearts could stand to take notes from. Ryza's active time combat is still a blast that walks a fine line between mindless button mashing and strategic resource management. But this is a rare example of a JRPG sequel where the modifications to the first game's format changes the subtle details of the system so much that I can't say one is clearly better than the other. Making item charges infinite is really handy to avoid returning to base constantly to refill your items, but starting from zero and having to build up charges to use such a crucial part of the special attack system, every single fight not only makes the opening turns of a given fight feel like busy work, at least until you've significantly upgraded the core crystals, but it also feels like it puts substantial restrictions on mid-fight choices. In short, it's still deceptively simple, but emphases are placed on completely different parts of the system and they're both worth playing for their own merits. Overall, Ryza 2 was more of Ryza 1 with extra steps. And while that isn't skyrocketing it to the top 10 games of all time for me, it's still one of my favorite JRPGs right now.
3.
Somewhere out in space, there's a world that's not for heroes and has no rest for the wicked. But it does have a legend of a vault full of untold riches. A sane man would tell you it's a bunch of nonsense. But what do you think, Jack?
Hey, you think you'll freeze to death out there? No, probably not. Bandits will get you first. My day? Been pretty good. Just bought a pony made of diamonds.
Alright, say it with me, kids. In the same year that a long-awaited sequel to a beloved franchise released, I played the original! Or rather, the entry the franchise is known for. I played Borderlands 1 way back when it was new, and while I had a blast, it was pretty grindy and bland by the end. Thankfully, Borderlands 2 lives up to the hype, as a game and a sequel. The admittedly solid character sheets that were the previously playable Vault Hunters get fleshed out into some fairly endearing characters with bombastic personalities and some solid arcs. The bizarrely intricate web of unique characters that make up the saner members of Pandora's population are much easier to see when corralled into one base that remains the same the whole playthrough. Tina, in particular, is an adorable Chaos Gremlin, who really shouldn't be allowed near all those explosives. Then there's Handsome Jack, the kind of complex and well-written villain that other stories wish they had. He walks the line between fallen hero and villain you love to hate so well that I had to stop and genuinely think what I felt about him. Not because the story wasn't clear on how he acted and what his motivations were, but because why he held so strongly to the motivations he had in the way he did is so complex that it's genuinely difficult to discern how to think of him. Gameplay-wise, they managed to avoid fixing what wasn't broke by simply adding more of everything that made the first game great. More enemy variations that have more unique and fun weak spots. More biomes with elaborate set pieces. More hilarious video game Easter eggs. And so many more guns. My personal favorites are the assault rifle that fires rockets, and the fiery red sniper rifle that won't shut up.
Oh, great! Now you're wasting ammo!
Location-wise, most of my favorites are in the DLC, to be honest. But to my surprise, I genuinely felt nostalgic attachment when I found Firestone. What? No. No! No! Oh my gosh, We're here. We're here. We're home! And more than ever, felt righteous fury against that self-important windbag for desecrating it. Finally, it has to be said, this is the game that finally pushed me over the edge to affiliate rank on Twitch. And for that alone, this game will always have a special place in my heart.
2.
Behold, the surprise hit of the year! Ever since Recettear demonstrated how mercantile experiences can be done well and super addicting, I've been looking for a more refined version of the format. Potionomics is simultaneously too different to be an outright replacement for what Recettear offered, and exactly the kind of refined take on the premise of running an item shop I was looking for. This game is an amazing example of my preferred design philosophy of having multiple gameplay loops that flesh out the world building while adding attributes or mechanics that other gameplay loops have to work around. Like, the primary loop is debatably playing a card game to simulate the back and forth of haggling for better payouts from the potions you're selling. But, in order to have potions to sell in the first place, you have a whole gameplay loop of mixing and matching potion ingredients to make potions to sell. Then, going further back or forward on the loop, you have to acquire ingredients to make said potions. And this introduces a whole Persona-esque life sim gameplay loop. Each of these gameplay loops are rich enough that if modified ever so slightly, they could stand on their own. But together, they become so much more. The barter phase is much more interesting when you have to balance the time it takes to open the shop with how long it takes for potions to cook, and a desire to build relationships with the NPCs for those social links or deck-enhancing cards. The potion crafting loop is far more nuanced when the potions have differing values combined with functions outside of being sold. You need to work around the limited supply of ingredients you have at the moment and a quantity benchmark to reach specific levels of potion potency. The life sim element has a lot more decision making to be had when traveling between town and work has a level of time commitment to it. Funds are a genuine concern, and social links reward with not only new attacks, but one of the few ways to heal your equivalent of the health stat. Again, these gameplay loops embody more than the sum of their parts. And while I've been gushing about gameplay, don't think the world isn't incredibly solid as well. The main story is a genuinely well-written, if a very predictable, coming-of-age story made fresh through some bonkers aspects of the lore and world. There's some amazing characters, both in concept and design, that make pushing for that next social link worth doing even without the mechanical incentive. Mimics as pets, anyone? Literally the only real complaint I have is that the game is terribly unfriendly to beginners. And even if this is one of the funniest game over screens ever, probably best to go with the easiest difficulty setting on a first playthrough. Like I said, I actually played a lot of games this year. And while a lot of them were not good enough to make the top 10, slowing down the process of releasing this video, they were good enough to be worth mentioning, with some brief thoughts about their positives and negatives. Batman Arkham City. The foundation for Arkham's gameplay remains entertaining as a 3D Metroidvania and as a beat-em-up. But this is the rare case where I think going open world really was detrimental to the game as a whole. The storytelling is kind of mediocre, and the twists have not had time to build in this setting, nor have they paid off in interesting ways during the games that have come out since. Also, the Riddler trophies often involve some really unwieldy mechanics that I am not a fan of. That said, the Mr. Freeze fight really is as good as they say. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. Getting to explore the many locations of Bikini Bottom was a blast from the past, and expansions on locations like Jellyfish Fields and Goo Lagoon were great, while Rock Bottom and Kelp Forest were frustratingly linear. But the biggest problem with the game was how tedious and unfun the game could be at times, whether it was jank controls, low margin for error, or tools and abilities that had the Zelda problem of feeling more like single solution puzzles than power fantasies. There was more frustration than depth. Digimon Cyber Sleuth. Really fun seeing so many cool designs of all the Digimon I've missed since Frontiers ended. Exploring cyberspace was a pretty solid time waster. And while the story was a weird mix of Atlas tropes and Digimon's weirdness, it did pull off some hype moments. Unfortunately, it was held back by being originally designed for a PSP, as well as some aspects of Atlas design philosophy that I hate. DuckTales Remastered! Lovely to revisit the original DuckTales style in a post-reboot era. Frankly, it had been so long that I'd completely forgotten most of the lore of the original continuity. It's also a pretty fun platformer with some neat gimmicks. It was just too Nintendo hard for me to fully enjoy it. Final Fantasy XV. A perfectly lukewarm game to end my time with this franchise on. I really like a lot of the characters, set pieces, and how several classic Final Fantasy design tropes were converted into the open world format for this entry. Tragically, the second half railroads things significantly. And like virtually every other Final Fantasy I've played, as more twists piled on, the less suspension of disbelief and emotional investment I had to give. Not only is the bittersweet tragedy they decided to go with not something I enjoy at all, but in no way do I think the storytellers earned either the bitter or the sweet aspects of that tragedy. However, at least we finally rectified the injustice of Tifa's pinball machine not being playable.
1.
It's been a long time since I came away from a game in my backlog so enthralled that I seriously considered it a new contender for the top 10. But this year, it finally happened, when an old classic was dug back out of Nintendo's hoard to lead the charge for a new console. If you listen, you can hear it coming. Donkey Kong Bonanza is not the 3D collectathon perfected that a proper DK64 successor deserves. However, it is an incredibly fun 3D platformer that blends solid writing and nostalgia to create a story that is the delicious split banana complementing the gameplay ice cream. The Bonanza forms are a creative way to bring back the functionality of the animal buddies, even if I'm kind of bummed we didn't get more cameos from the classic buddies. The change to the linear format sets off my linearity problem instincts, and I think there are genuine problems with the skill tree's resource economy, but using bananas as currency for a skill tree is an excellent shift if you are going to switch over to a more linear format. Fossils, on the other hand, are practically perfect, with tons of variety aesthetically while being used as a currency for things that are primarily aesthetic, but still has mechanical functionality if you want the help. Pauline is a surprisingly fun sidekick that simultaneously goes on her own character arc while being the catalyst for a less prominent Harry Dad escorting child character arc the player experiences as DK. And her being an aspiring singer interjects some pop music to go along with the nostalgia pieces and modern level pieces. All that said, the biggest reason this game is such a bombshell in my rankings is because it has one of the most thoroughly explored primary mechanics I have ever seen. By themselves, the ability to climb everything and the ability to destroy everything are slightly generic at this point. Yet combining them weaves them together in surprisingly sophisticated ways, such that you can build a staircase out of negative space, or you can accidentally destroy all the paths upward in a given location. Moreover, It is absolutely insane how many different kinds of terrain with different mechanical properties they created to both build the world out of and to allow the player to solve puzzles, or interact with said world in a myriad of creative and fun ways. Every single time I thought they would run out of ideas, they would introduce something new, and I cannot tell you the last time I saw that in a game. This would have been enough to put the game in top 10 contention by numbers alone. But the late game twist, coupled with the preceding levels full of fan service, added the emotional through line I needed to go from liking the game to loving it. There's still hypothetical potential for some other 3D platformer to usurp Donkey Kong Bonanza, but the likelihood isn't high. So there you have it. 10 great games with honorable mentions to round out the experience. It was a crazy mix. Many were bucket list titles I was happy to at least experience, even if they didn't turn out as great as I would like. Even more crazy were the sleeper hits at the end. I really was not expecting Potionomics to hit that far out of its weight class, or DK Bonanza to be such a complete package. We won't talk about how long it took to get this video out, but let's just say don't expect anything else till at least November, when I hopefully will have another Zelda and the linearity problem. Lord willing, I'll actually get the top 10 games of 2026 on time, and I will have the equilibrium to make more videos next year. But I also have Twitch to focus on now, and as I get older, I feel like I really need to focus on making my own video games if I ever expect to see them exist. So I'll just say, God bless you, and see you when I see you.